good-looking lad, wasn't he? He used to model for Armani, and we were all modelling for Balaclava.
This is the official Leeds United podcast.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We obviously want to talk about Gary Speed, who we know that you know so well. Big anniversary of his passing this week, 10 years on. And we have heard so much talk about not just him as a player on the pitch, but the kind of man that he was. And I think that is the most striking thing. Who was Gary Speed to you? What was he like?
Well, he was young, sweet and innocent when I met him at 14. I think it's quite common that people know that we were sort of signed on the same day as schoolboys. Back in the day, that's the earliest you could sign as a 14-year-old. And the thing that struck me was that this strange accent, because I'm from North Yorkshire and I'd never heard anybody speak like he did. And he had a soft North Wales accent. But he was such a lovely, humble person. Exactly like his parents, Roger and Carol were exactly the same. So my parents went to every youth cup game, every youth game, every reserve game, and they were always there. And so my parents got friendly with us as well. And we shared the bus on many mornings to training and got the same bus home. He was in different digs to me, but he was just such an honest person, hard-working person, and a fun person as well, because any time there was any pranks that were knocking around as apprentices, there was always one person that was knocking around, instigating them all, and it wasn't me.
What sort of pranks are we talking about?
Just things like all of a sudden you'd be in the boot room and the light would go out, so you'd all be cleaning pros' boots, and all of a sudden the light would go out, and then there'd be like handfuls of boots just flown around the room and hitting people on heads and everything, and you're just like, a minute later, all the boots are off the walls. If you've got black eyes, you've got cuts coming off the back of your head. You just had to take cover.
Is there a specific memory that really does stand out for you? One in particular, Simon?
I think it was just the whole period of him, you know what I mean? I don't think there's one particular time. It was just the way he trained every day, you know what I mean? That he ended up playing the number of games in the career that he did through his sheer dedication. I thought I was dedicated when I played, but he was a different level, and hence why he played in the Premier League the number of games that he did and represented his country. We went on, obviously, to do our coaching badges together on the same Welsh courses, and you could see the dedication both on the training pitch and in the bar on a night time after a long day in the classroom as well. So he enjoyed all that. But no, he just had this personality. He was so humble and easy to get on with. And ultimately as well, he was a good-looking lad, wasn't he? He used to model for Armani, and we were all modelling for Balaclava.
on the pitch, was he one of those players really early on that you knew was going to make it, was going to be a star?
To start with, I was like the youth team captain, and Gaz was in and out of the youth team, but you could see he had plenty of qualities about him, and then he got moved to the left wing where he seemed to flourish. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I've got over Speedo is that I made my Leeds debut before him. He might have played 300 games more than me, but I still made mine quicker than he did. But you could just see that he wasn't arrogant, he was confident, and he had good physique, great in the air, fantastic left foot. And he just had all that, he just had an aura about him. But it wasn't easy for him as an apprentice and young players, because you had to have a desire and a hunger and certainly a strong character to make it back in the 80s and early 90s, because there was some tough characters in the dressing room. Like Vinnie Jones was around at that time, and but he knew what he was capable of doing, and he trusted everything that he was doing was going to be the right thing to lead him to where he got to.
Everyone felt like he was a club hero, even though, like Bolton, for example, he played less than half as many games for them as he did for Leeds, but they feel like he's one of their own. Mm. It just feels like a testament to the character and who he was, that it just, every club he was at loved him.
Yeah, I think also the football world as well, because on obviously the weekend when it was his 10th anniversary, it wasn't just the clubs that he played for that were acknowledging it. Mm. This was like a nationwide thing where people were putting on this, that and other about him, and that's how high regard he was held by everybody, not just the clubs that he played for. And that's, again, testament to the player, but to the man himself as well.
All Leeds, aren't we? The official Leeds United podcast.
Simon, you speak about the man and the player, and how he wore his heart on his sleeve, and how he lived life. And there was this perception of just a very successful, happy young man. And I think that is something that in society we still need to work on, don't you? That we see beyond this perceived idea of happiness and what that looks like.
Well, definitely. And you only have to look at Gary for one of the biggest examples. The day before he died, he was on Football Focus doing an interview, laughing and joking with the camera people. I think Dan Walker was doing the interview, and he didn't look or sound any different. And that is the problem that we've got in this modern day now as well, that people are not open enough, don't talk enough, and don't share the problems. And it's something that society, football that we're talking about, have to share and get more involved with to stop these things happening again, because it should never have happened. Some 42-year-old Gary Speed dying was an absolute tragedy. That's why it's so important now that everybody should open up, don't feel embarrassed, don't be scared to talk to people, because even if it's a 5-10 minute with a conversation with somebody, it can be relieving and help you out and get you through tough times.
I know that we're still going at a bit of a snail's pace, particularly amongst men, when we're trying to make improvements in that area. You know, you've been in management for a long time now, Simon. Do you see improvements? Do you see opportunities for players to be opening up a bit more? And not just players, actually, backroom staff as well, yourself included. Do you see that it's the stigma is lessening?
I think it's lessening, but it still isn't to where we all want to be, without a shadow of a doubt, because there still needs to be more, because people are still in dark places and still not coming out and talking as openly and as much freedom as they should do and need to do. I've had incidences over a number of years, and recently a player brought down in tears that he wanted to retire and pack in because he was in a dark place. And you don't realise that until this player came to me. And you've got to then realise that it's still a massive, massive issue, that people are not wanting to talk, but they shouldn't be scared of talking. As soon as he came to me, I felt a bit annoyed with myself that I didn't see any danger of how he was feeling. But it's like a car. You can't sometimes see what's underneath the bonnet, what's wrong with it, is it? And that's the biggest thing. And individuals have to be there for each other and come out and talk openly.
We talk about football players, their mental well-being, and often they're open to attack. You know, if they don't have a good game, their performance is scrutinised and sometimes it gets personal. But there'll be a lot of people listening right now who definitely aren't professional football players, who will also have the same fears, who have financial fears, who are scared that if they say something at work, they might not keep their job, because unfortunately not everybody is understanding as the four of us sat in this room right now. And do you think that football, because it is such a male-dominated sport, and because fans, the majority, it's great to see there are a lot more females following it, but the majority are men, and we know that it is men that struggle to talk statistically more than women. Do you think football has a responsibility to help people outside of the sport as well to speak up?
Well, definitely. Anytime there's any opportunity to highlight issues, problems, and this openness that we're talking, that we want people to be talking about, then let's do it. And there is no better way of promoting mental health is through football, because so many people watch it, see it, talk about it, read about it. And if we can keep focusing on how easy it should be for somebody to talk and be open about any issues, any dark problems that you may have, well, let's just keep doing it, because we've got so many tools at our disposal now where you can encourage people to do this. And it's great that you're talking about this on a regular basis, because Leeds United is a worldwide football club, and if it can help, even if it helps one person who's talking about it today, well, that's great. Let's hope that it helps many other people who are maybe going through issues.
Yeah, we've come a long way, but we still do have a long way to go. Just finally, lads, I want us to hear from someone who knew Gary Speed very well. Here's Bryn Law.
10 years ago, I was standing in pretty much exactly this position before the sun had risen by the Bremner statue outside of Ellen Road. And the reason I was here at 5:30 in the morning was that I was reporting on the death of Gary Speed. Now, Gary, as someone I had covered as a reporter of Leeds United and someone I'd worked with closely when he became the national team manager of Wales, but more than anything, I counted Gary Speed as a friend. And I was standing here that awful, awful morning to report on the death of a friend, and in the most tragic circumstances imaginable. Nobody could comprehend what had happened. And as I stood here before the sun had risen, people kept coming, bringing flowers, placing any sort of memento by this statue here, just because they wanted to be here, to be in the presence of the stadium, to make a gesture, a symbolic gesture that just showed how much they felt they'd lost when Gary had gone. And it was indicative of the way that he was appreciated by fans at this football club, but not only at this football club, every other club that he represented, and way beyond that as well. In the game itself, almost you might say in society, that there was a huge outpouring of grief at that time, as nobody could quite understand what had happened here, that this talented, handsome, friendly, nice young guy had taken his own life. It was just too much to try and take in. It was just too much to try and comprehend. But that's what I tried to do over the course of the hours that I stood by this statue reporting on this. And ultimately for me, it became too much as well, because I actually broke down. It was live television and I couldn't go on, I couldn't carry on, and I couldn't say any more. And we're still standing here now asking the why, and we're still standing here now having conversations about men's mental health in particular. And I think that's one of the key aspects of this tragic event, is that we have to have these conversations and we have to try and work out the why so that we prevent these things happening again in future. I never would want to be standing in that position again, reporting on the death of a friend. I wouldn't want to be in the position again of bumping into Gary's dad, Roger, the following weekend at Goodison Park in reception, somebody I knew well from the years of being friendly with Gary. And that meeting will live with me forever. When I saw Roger and we embraced in the reception at Goodison Park. Terrible, awful moment, because he just looked a broken man, because he absolutely doted on Gary. So that is the why. That's the thing that we have to try and tackle here ultimately. But we also must remember a footballer who had a massive impact on this football club, who had a massive impact on the international team in Wales, who was loved and adored at every club he played at. And in the days following Gary's death, I attended a game here at Elland Road, and it became the memorial game, if you like. And at the end of the match, I was standing in the tunnel, and Patrick Kishinorbo, one of the Leeds United players that day, came over, saw me standing there, and handed me this. And that was the armband that every player wore on that day in that game at Elland Road. And I'll keep this for the rest of my life as a memory, a very black memory, but a memory of somebody who I called a friend and who we remember on the 10th anniversary of his terrible passing this weekend.
Listening on together.
Time for us to look at the moment of the week with Boost Drinks. First up, I know everyone is going to agree with this one. And we talked about Kevin Sinfield's ridiculous attempt to run 101 miles in 24 hours last week, didn't we? He was aiming to raise money for Leeds Hospital's charities bid to build a Rob Burrows Centre for Motor Neurone Disease in Leeds and the MND Association. Well, lads, he did it. He raised a whopping £2 million, taking the total that he's raised so far to an incredible £5 million. That is
Mate, that
amazing.
is outrageous.
Extraordinary. That is extraordinary. Last year, I had the pleasure of meeting Rob's doctor, Dr. Jung. She had this wonderful idea for this care centre, because the current one is absolutely just not fit for purpose whatsoever. And she had these big ideas, really optimistic, and she was talking about how much it was going to improve lives and how wonderful it was going to be, and it all sounded great. And I just was like, well, how much is it going to cost? And she was like, it's going to be this. And I was like, yo, okay. She's got wonderful stories that you can hear in Rob's book about how she met him and stuff. And she was we were meant to meet each other, and this is going to happen. Enter Sir Kev Sinfield.
Wow.
I can't believe it. They are They really are going to get. They're really going to get it. They're going to do it. We're going to have the Rockborough M&D Care Centre in Leeds. It's going to be absolutely fantastic.
Now, our first moment of the week suggestion came in at the 11th hour from Sarah, lads. She said, "Seeing Pat turn out for the under-23s was my moment of the week. We need him out there on the pitch, and fingers crossed his next appearance will be for the first team." I think you're in a room full of people who agree here.
Oh.
Oh, here we go.
He did, but it was offside, and it was a screamer, to be fair to him. I'll give him that. However, there is something I agree with her with. Turning out for the under-23s, I'm buzzing that I saw Luke Ayling play 45 minutes, and he came through it relatively unscathed as well, which is always a good sign.
He only had a bloody knock on his ankle. Mills had a proper, real injury.
You broke yours.
Exactly.
You don't see you moaning
Do you know
and
what,
complaining.
boys?
Yeah.
No one's giving me moment of the week.
Do you know what, right,
Moaner
boys?
of the week.
Oh, yeah. Simon got in touch to say, seeing clubs up and down the land signifying their support for the LGBTQ plus cause was so uplifting. The support of those in the game will make a real life change, marching out together. And I think that's quite fitting, actually, for what we've spoken about this week, about the responsibility that football has in society to make sure that we're talking about everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Precisely. And I think that actually the two things can go hand in hand, because if someone is struggling with their sexuality or their identity or whatever it is, that can very, very easily lead into mental health issues. By doing what happened this weekend, by everyone wearing the armbands and displaying the flags, it is showing to some people, and hopefully one day all people, that we are creating an environment where you can feel free to be yourself and express yourself.
Well, I think I know then, boys, who's going to get your vote. But are we going with Sarah, who spoke about the fact it was great to see Pat playing for the under-23s, or Simon?
I would say
Sarah,
Simon's with a twist.
Yeah, Sarah's was a
Sorry,
good one.
Sarah.
Sarah's was a good one. But yeah, I'm going to go with Simon.
Simon, congratulations. You've got yourself a crate of Boost drinks. Please do keep your moment of the week suggestions coming in using the hashtag LUFCpod.
This is the official Leeds United podcast.